Welcome everyone to Viz Review week 37. I have to start actually remembering it. It seems to be just the 30s are a bit tricky for me. How are you, Charlie?
I'm good. I'm having a busy day today, but now I'm happy to have the relative calm of this review to slow my heart rate down a bit.
Excellent. And we're going to do just an hour today because you have another meeting, right? So we'll...
Yeah, this is the calm before another storm. So yeah,
yes.
Dock off at 5.
All right. So let me jump over to our other screen. And what I actually wanted to start with is the data set on data.world. And I can see from the chat that there's a few people tuned in. So if you're online, give a quick wave or a hello in the YouTube live chat to let everyone know that you're there. Now, Charlie, let's have a quick look at this data set. School workforce in England. So this is about teacher salaries, and I haven't had time to look at it yet. So can you give us a very short overview of what we're dealing with?
Yeah, so it's just over the last 10 years, it's saying by gender or in total for certain teaching roles, what is the average salary for those roles. So it's like at a national level in the UK, so no geographical variation. But in aggregation, that's it. Quite straightforward.
Okay. So if I look at that original chart, I can...
That's the one we're after is a little further down. So there's a bit that's called teachers' pay or something like that. If you
okay, let me check.
You scroll down.
Okay. So teacher pay.
Here
we go. Okay, it's creating the chart. There, okay, there's a table and there's the chart. Mean pay. Okay, so this is the average pay and some very floaty tooltips. Good to see so many people online. Okay, so we have the mean pay, and these are different categories. Oh, this is not great.
Yeah, it's awkward. There's lots that can be improved. There's just tiny little stuff like the x-axis not having a comma or a currency sign. That annoys me, but the tooltips are crazy. And actually, when you look at the data as well, there's so much more that's easy to pull out from it rather than just focus on one year. So it was a good option to tackle this.
And quite frankly, for me, it's like, why not break these out? Because why not have 3 sections or 3 divisions in this chart that show the mean, like always having female versus male in the same category, because the category is what changes, but then the color each time changes as well. So I find that really confusing. So people have probably heard, so I haven't looked at this data yet, but the first step I tend to always do, and something I want to recommend to everyone, is to actually look at the numbers. You can do that on data.world. I've got that on the screen right now. But also, in Tableau, if you just go to the data view, even if you spend 30 seconds, but just familiarizing yourself with what's actually in these different fields, because it makes it so much easier to understand what you're dealing with. And what you'll find out very quickly is under gender, you have female, male, total, unclassified. So that already gives you an indication that, you can't just, aggregate these all up because there's a total number in there. So something to be mindful of in my recommendation here. Also in grade, there is a total. So that would be, at least from what I understand, the average, but across all of them. So
yeah, I know people have asked about this. So these are obviously weighted averages at the total, and we don't know what number of people are in each of these different roles and within the different gender categories. So you can't just average these values and arrive back at those total values because you're not sure how many of each type you've got. So like you say, like Andy, when he does his Watch Me Viz stuff, he's really particular about checking the data source and the data and tying stuff up. And what you've said is totally right, because once you've tackled data and you think you understand it, it's important to stand back at the end and say, actually, does what I've said actually make sense now?
Yeah, and I think it also then depends a bit on the data source. In this case, it's actually the government, the UK government, providing these numbers. So I'm going to trust them that they have done the weighted average correctly, given that I don't have the other numbers. And like Charlie said, you can't, average the existing numbers, and just kind of divide it by 3 or something for the categories, because you don't know how many teachers are in each. But you can go with that weighted average, but that's at the total level. Okay, so shall we go into our list? You've created a nice collection for us to review.
I have, yes. If we start down at the bottom, because those are the earliest submissions.
Absolutely. So
And
that's
we quite often get inquiries about how do we get into Viz Review, and there's the process of just do the hashtag, and then Eva and I will select what we hope is a decent mix of stuff. So if we've got 50 line charts, we're not going to include all 50 because lots of our feedback applies to line charts, irrespective of if it's the first or the 50th. So you're not guaranteed a spot, but we try and include a good mix.
Yeah, exactly. So we have Preeti's viz about the gender pay gap in England's state-funded schools. And I really like the title because it's like, well, I haven't looked at the rest of the viz, but the title makes me expect something quite specific. And I'm like, okay, I know what to expect. I know what's going to come. But the pay gap is really lost because I can't even read it. I have to rotate my head by 90 degrees. And the gap isn't really obvious. I thought the pay gap would be like the biggest thing on this page, but it's a number that I can't read.
Yeah, and the layout doesn't help, and then the fact that we've got a parameter that forces you to drill into one particular school year means that you also lose sight of any direction of travel. So we don't know if the gap's growing or shrinking. We don't know if pay is increasing or decreasing. So I think it works from a functional level, ignoring the issue of swiveling your head round. But I do think it loses a whole load of the context which is in the data. So it's quite a simple data set, which is easy to find some insight in. And I just think this is a bit too focused on 1 year at a time.
Yeah, and I get very distracted by the icons. So we've got different icons for classroom teachers versus head teachers versus other leadership teachers. I mean, those icons to me are not necessarily intuitive. And then we have the blue and orange circles, but the color legend is really far away from them, and the green of those top icons really distracts me from the next colors, which are actually explained. So I find, I would move the pay gap up, really, in the first instance, and rotate it.
Yeah, and I don't think we need a color legend because it's in the title anyway, so you could remove that little bit of clutter. Yeah. I think 2 decimal places is unnecessary in the bottom section, which might allow you to actually shrink it, spin it 90 degrees and make it run horizontally nicely. And I always find it difficult. These circles are obviously uniformly sized and they're in the same sort of vertical plane, so there's no difference between them because of that. And it kind of feels like a bit of a missed opportunity to actually depict data. It's just forcing stuff into these uniform slots. So I think if that's how it was intended to be, that's cool, but I don't think it visualizes data.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. Now there's a comment from Ashik saying, does this pay gap exist in all professions and all countries? Well, that would have to be analyzed because we can't make a blanket statement to cover that. There is a very strong suggestion that there is typically a pay gap between men and women. And I was actually surprised with this teacher data because my impression has been, and at least that's the case in Germany, that in primary and secondary school, there are more female teachers than male teachers. And I would have thought that if there's more of one sex, one gender in a profession, that they would dominate the pay. But even though there's more female teachers, I think, they still earn less. Like, how do they not have the power to negotiate that?
That's the problem with aggregated data, isn't it, as well? Because actually, are there more part-time female teachers than male? That's a possibility, and then all this drives stuff down.
Plus, it could also be the subjects. If more, I mean, in my school career, the male teachers I had were in all the science subjects, and the female teachers I had were in more the humanities. And I wonder if in Germany, you've got all sorts of salary bands for teachers. I actually want to look at German teacher pay in this context because German teachers are very well paid. I think they're in the top 10 in the world in terms of average salary. Okay, so next viz is by Farhan Ibrahim, and gender pay gap still prevalent in the UK. We have quite a lot of decoration here.
Yeah, that was kind of the reason I included it. So, I mean, there's a lot of blue and orange, so I guess we can say it's accessible for people with color deficiency, so that ticks a box. And the bars kind of tie in with the colors that are in the background, so that's good. But what? Oh, okay. So at the bottom we got this slider for years, which I'd almost lost. I almost didn't see it. So we can move around and see year by year what's going on, what's the gap.
How do you generally feel about sliders for years, Charlie? Because I always find, while they're kind of cool and intuitive, they also remove all the context of seeing the bigger picture over time, right?
Yeah, totally. It's like a comment for the last one. It just, you lose the context, so it makes it a very focused process. So it's good if you're practicing using new filters and using parameters, that's fine, but it just lacks that contextual edge.
Definitely. I mean, I guess in terms of design, I like that there's a bar chart. I think that's really helpful for just comparing the numbers. What I'm not super keen on is the color choices. Yes, don't go with stereotypical, blue and pink, but also don't go against what's intuitive. I mean, orange might be neutral, but I think orange for male, blue for female is then counterintuitive. And the red font is hard to read on that, so I would make that either black or white. I would get rid of some of the decoration. Like it's just a bit much for me to actually focus on the data. And while the bars are good, they're not fixed axes. So, the bars don't change. It's just the number inside that changes. So the context of these different levels of teachers is lost.
Yeah, that axis thing was my main gripe. You want to see that variability relative to head teacher.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have Diego Ivan.
So I think Diego's first submission was reviewed last week, so he's in twice, or back to back.
Nice. The gender salary gap in UK state-funded schools. Okay, good, clear title. Okay, get paid. Paid is misspelled at the top. That's kind of the first thing I noticed there. Okay. Now it says get paid up to 12.33%. That's maybe a bit precise. More than female teachers for the same position. Are we sure it's the same position, or is there variance, among head teachers, for example, based on their tenure and stuff? So Michelle suggested there are differences in years of service, location, and other factors. So can we really say these are perfectly comparable, which would be great, but it's not, if we can't say it with confidence, then we shouldn't.
Yeah, I think it's a framing thing. So if we're explicitly saying on average, then I think it sort of softens that a little bit. So it might be beneficial just to reframe it at the top. I think what caught my eye on this one was the second section, because what it's showing is what is the gap between the male and female salaries in each of those years, and it's a layout that I struggled to get my head around, because so for each of the roles above, so we can see the orange, the red and the blue corresponds with certain roles. How has that difference evolved? And I was totally expecting to see like a line chart, because this feels like a sort of fragmented Gantt chart that's been spun around 90 degrees, and I just didn't find it that intuitive to read.
Yeah, it could even be, I mean, I don't personally really like waterfall charts because I think they can look messy, but something that shows how much more the male teachers are paid, or, in terms of the percentage comparison. Because at the moment, we just see basically a single data point. We see in 2010 to 2011, 3.86% for classroom teachers. But that's the difference. But it doesn't make me think of a difference. It just makes me think of 3.86% because I don't see one versus the other. So bringing in the element of comparison would be really helpful here.
Yeah, and so I think the only other feedback I've really got is, again, it's a wide one, isn't it? I think it's unnecessarily wide. The bars at the top are huge, and then it's almost like this second chart has forced everything to be this wide just to accommodate 2 decimal places and stuff like that. So I think you could chop this down by maybe a third widthwise, and just use a conventional line chart to convey the same sort of message.
Yeah. Okay. And then we have Seamus Deagan up next.
And I included Seamus's for kind of a different reason, because so many other people have focused, as they are perfectly allowed to do, on the gender piece. But what Seamus has done is look at, actually, isn't it quite interesting to see that average teacher salaries have increased by 14.2% compared to classroom teacher salaries at 7.8%. And now, again, we have to be careful of the conclusions we could draw from that, because maybe head teacher roles have evolved hugely over this period, and now they're responsible for more stuff, and maybe classroom teachers more or less are kind of doing the same sort of stuff that they were 10 years ago. But I like the fact that Seamus maybe didn't look at the obvious pattern and instead focused on the gap that exists in the hierarchy rather than by gender, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's also a completely valid analysis to do, because it doesn't, there's obviously the gender element, like you said, but also looking overall, what does the industry look like? And quite frankly, I think it's terrible how, they're not paying more to classroom teachers who, I guess head teachers, they still do a bunch of teaching, but classroom teachers, they're the front line. So I think the pandemic has taught us all how valuable and important teachers are, so they should definitely get paid more.
Yeah.
If I hear correctly between the lines, Charlie, you're very pleased that you can rely on teachers again too.
No, I am pleased with it, but joking aside, 6 months of the kids not being able to socially interact normally or relatively normally, you can see the impact it has on them, and their happiness levels in the last 2 weeks have been, I don't know, I should have charted it somehow, but they're off the scale.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's just, I feel it for myself, and I'm an adult who can just do whatever I want, really. But as a kid, when you're not even controlling that stuff, but then also you're kept at home or kept away from your friends physically, like it's tough. So totally get it. Okay. Next we have Arun Kumar, and here we have pink and blue.
Yeah. So I'll invite you to tackle the old pink and blue.
Oh, I happily will. Please, no pink and blue. It's just a bit overdone. It makes me think of gender reveal parties that start wildfires in California, quite frankly. No, that's just a silly little joke here, but pink and blue is so overdone, and I think when we're talking about teachers, would you ever associate a female teacher with pink and a male teacher with blue? Like, that's not really the colors that I would associate here. I think if we have a viz about baby names, fine, but pink and blue are just like kind of baby colors, I think. So the other issue I have is this really strange vertical text, and then from is horizontal, and then it keeps going vertically, and it's just impossible to read. There is a lot of busyness in this chart that I don't understand. I don't know why there's like numbers. It looks a bit like a balance sheet, but I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's complex. So the stuff you've said, I totally agree with. So like we've got these call outs for minimum and maximum, but they're distracting boxes. The vertical axes are slightly confusing. These differences that are to the side. So I've got minus 199 at the top left and then minus 41 on the right. But what is that? Because in 2011, the difference between male and female looks to be about, I don't know, 100 and something, but I can't correlate that with the numbers that are either side. So I don't know what these side numbers are. And then there's little details like the color choice we've already touched on, but you don't need color legends that are just like the crappy Tableau color legends. We can just incorporate them in titles to just do away with these horrible little squares. And then there's the thing about these butterfly charts. Are they actually that nice to read? They're not, because you can't gauge what the numbers are without hovering on them. So is this efficient, or would it be better just to work out actually what is the difference between the male and female average salary for this year and in this role? Does that take away a lot of effort for the viewer? And I think it does. So I'm not a big fan of this chart type.
Yeah, I find it not very intuitive. I think there's easier ways to get this across, like you say. And I'd also be mindful, like, I mean, if you want this to be a very casually communicated viz, then I guess your title is fine. But let's explore the salary trend for teachers in UK. What if I don't want to? Like, it, you know, it's a, I guess, a almost like a command to do something, but their title doesn't give me information that makes me feel like, oh yeah, I want to explore it. So maybe instead it's something neutral, like an analysis of salary trends for teachers in the UK, because then below it says, you know, seems the salary increased much. Well, are you a data analyst, or are you someone doing guesswork or having a stab at something? Like, words matter so much, and I think I will probably do videos about that until the day I die, because the words communicate so much in addition to what your viz does, but they can also really let you down and undermine your competence, because people might be like, oh, this is like a really weird way of addressing an unknown audience. I also don't understand why there's green text, why there's text underlined that's not a hyperlink, and then it's not a full sentence. So it seems the salary increased much isn't grammatically correct, but also for head teachers over the years and from 2018 to 2019 major difference in salary for all teachers. Like, what are you trying to say? And please put it in full sentences, or make it like succinct and just in an order that's like, it seems like there's 3 different things in this one sentence, but I can't quite pinpoint it. And yeah, it's really important to be very clear about what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I think sometimes we say, if there's a big question at the top of a viz, make sure you answer it. And actually a similar theme is, if you make a statement, make sure that the viz below shows that. And so the first thing about head teachers kind of doesn't make sense. You might say, actually, relative to the lower grade staff, their increase is proportionately higher. That's kind of factual and makes sense. And then the thing that from 2018 to 19, major difference in salary for all teachers. Well, where is that? Because the total average isn't in here. So just try and back up your words.
Absolutely. And while I bring up the next viz by Nadine, there's a question from Irina, and she says, I never understood how it is possible to make gender pay gap illegal, considering it is an aggregated value. So I would say, I don't know, I mean, you can't make the pay gap illegal because the pay gap just exists, or it doesn't. But from what I know, it's basically, you can't pay 2 people differently for doing the same job, but based on their gender, you pay them differently. And this stuff happens all the time. Someone, takes on a job, and hopefully more and more people actually start talking to each other about their salaries, so that we can actually uncover where these, where the unfairness is happening, so that people see, oh my God, my male colleague who does exactly the same job is paid more than me for no apparent reason. And that stuff needs to be called out, and that stuff needs to be addressed. That's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, no, it's a weird thing. It's like when I'm recruiting for people at work, we don't have a set of salary rates for females and one for men. So that would be mental and just totally wrong. Just shows that it's a legacy, isn't it? It's just so you can address it now for people you're recruiting now, but you've got all of these existing recruited people that unfortunately it appears that in general men have benefited from just some strange decisions.
Yeah, and I guess, there are plenty of jobs that have salary bands that are fixed, where you start at this, and then sure, within the band there's that flexibility, and that might make it a bit of a grey zone. But then in the private sector, in things that aren't, I guess, unionized, like tech and data, there's plenty of organizations where they just determine whatever they want to pay you, and it could literally be that they offer a guy a higher salary, or they have a salary in their mind, but they offer the woman less. Maybe there is no mean intentions behind it, but maybe it's also because they think, well, she probably will accept it anyway. So always ask for more. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst they happen? They could say, if they really want you, you then negotiate, but always ask for more, and make sure you know what you're worth, and do a bit of research. Talk to colleagues or friends, or people in the community who are different, or in similar roles, and just kind of, people are uncomfortable talking about salary or pay or money. But I think we need to get more comfortable, because otherwise we can't fix this stuff. As we know with data, like, you can't address it if you can't see it. So yeah, this is a nice looking viz.
Yeah, it's really, I included it because it's really, really simple. And so, I mean, there's some stuff we've said today already applies, in the sense that I like the fact that it's really succinct at the top in the title and the subtitle, but I think it probably should say, just include the word on average, just to soften that sort of subtitle. There's an argument that because, again, we've got a parameter just picking individual years, that you lose that overall context again. It feels less of a hurdle here, because I suppose the fact that it almost hammers home the point, because if you flick through all these 10 years, you still see that same trend. So it almost works relative to the title having it here, whereas the others felt like they were more trend-based. This, I don't know, just feels a little bit different to me.
What if Nadine created a line chart at the top with basically same colors, 2 lines, one for female, one for male, and it could, she could do that. Like, she could do 3 small line charts, one for each of the different types of teachers. And then as people hover over the line chart, the bars update based on the year. Mm-hmm. Because that way you would see the overall, you get a bit of interactivity, and
that's good, yeah.
And you kind of see the trend as well, like the complete picture over time, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good idea.
But I like all the rest. Like, it's really neat design. The one thing I don't understand is on the right side, there's quite a bit of space.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, maybe press that.
Okay. And we will...
Ashley Zhang next.
Yes. Now, we've only got, I think, 3 weeks to go until Tableau conference on that's going to be virtual in early October, and hopefully everyone has seen that we're going to do Makeover Monday live. If you have not, then please make sure that, as you're already on Andy's channel watching this, make sure to subscribe to him. But also you will see upcoming live streams. There's 2 different time zones. So we're going to do an early morning one UK time, 8 a.m. UK time for everyone, kind of Asia Pacific and, Eastern Europe. And then we're going to do an afternoon one for Americas. And we'd love to have everyone join us. So you can set yourself a reminder for those live streams, whichever time zone suits you. We're going to do the same thing twice, and get everyone warmed up for the Tableau conference.
Yeah, it should be good fun.
Should be fun. I just have to find a data set. Okay. School workforce in England 2010 to 2019. So this one, remind me. Oh yeah, Ashley. Okay. What do you think of the icons? Haven't seen the icons before.
Yeah, this is kind of why I included this one. I included this for a couple of reasons. I don't think the icons are too overbearing here, because you can see the line pretty clearly, so you know where the start point is. I think the question of whether you need the icons, I would probably say no, but I don't think they're as in your face as some icons should be. I think the main reason I included this one was this left-hand section is basically just a slope chart, isn't it? Plotting the difference between 2010 to 2019. And I was wondering about truncating that y-axis like it has been done, so it doesn't start at 0. And I know this has been the subject of some debate on Twitter today, because it's almost okay to truncate a y-axis on a line chart like this, because we're not necessarily, it's not like a bar chart where you're trying to compare the overall length of something to understand the difference between things. And I was just wondering if you had any particular thoughts on doing that with this sort of chart.
It doesn't really bother me too much, but what I think is that because of the icons being so small and there just being a line between them, you don't really get the magnitude of the data as much unless you look at the numbers. So I was going to be kind of a bit boring and suggest a bar chart, but incorporating the icons in some way. And I mean, these are very standard male-female icons, but maybe just some, and this is going to be like fully stereotypical, but that are more just kind of head and shoulders, some sort of hair that indicates, you know, we're looking at man versus woman. But so the body is not like, it's not such a long thing, but it could just kind of sit on top of the bar chart maybe to give you, or even in the bottom, to give you that visual if you want to work with an icon. But the bars, I think, give you more of that magnitude of difference. Because to me, it's a bit too much white space here to really appreciate how big is 64,000 versus 72,000 at the top. Like, yeah, I just find that a bit like it's a missed opportunity, I guess.
Yeah. And on the right-hand side, it's quite often we talk about too much chart junk and too much clutter. Actually, I think this one's been simplified too much because it's screaming out for an axis for me, because it just feels like I've got these lines just knocking about, floating around, and I'm really keen to understand where is like the zero line here, because it's quite hard to make the comparison with how everything's fragmented. So you kind of want that reference point to know how clearly can I compare this stuff, and you want to be able to see, actually, are these y-axes on the same scale? Are they? So it's stuff like that you want to trust, and you can't do it when things are stripped back this much. So I'd look to probably include those.
Yeah, some kind of anchor, right?
Yeah.
Using the axis as an anchor. And sometimes you don't need it. I think if you have like a really solid bar chart, you don't necessarily need it because you can see where they all end. But I still sometimes give it that solid line. So there's like a bottom or a floor of like, this is the zero.
Yeah, and also the right-hand side, so what it's plotting is the year-on-year change, but you don't know it until you hover over it. So
yeah,
I want to know that, so I'd consider titling that as well.
Yeah, good suggestion. I like that. Okay. All right. The next one is Sudeshna. I'm really pleased that still there's, plenty of people using the live chat. I've really enjoyed doing that.
It's good, isn't it?
Doing this review on YouTube. Oh, we've got some automatic sizing and some really flat lines.
This is again, I include things with purpose. So when Andy was doing his piece on, I think, Monday, I asked a question in his chat, which was, is it wrong to steer away from just doing a line chart when you've got these really flat trends? Because when I look at this, across every role there, it's pretty dull to look at in terms, and it's not a criticism of the work that Sudeshna has done, but when I did this process, so I plotted stuff out, saw the lines and thought, well, that's kind of boring. What's a different way I can look at this data that doesn't make it more sexy, but has something which is more compelling? Because when you look at that, you just think, all right, you might conclude, yes, there's a gap there. You might conclude that actually their year-on-year changes seem fairly lean for what is such an important job, but it's just very wide and very flat. And so this is a case where, like when we talked about the slope chart last time, maybe it's okay to truncate that y-axis in that case if you're drawing attention to the gap rather than to the salary. And that's what I would suggest Sudeshna does is there a way you can look for a specific insight rather than just plotting the data?
Definitely. And I think, people can be a bit, adventurous or experiment a bit with what does that actually mean? So if I have a look at the most recent one for head teachers, we've got 68,000 for women, and the tooltips need to be tidied up. and then 77,000 for men. So let's call it, a £9,000 difference per year. What does it actually mean? That's, I don't know how much per month. Let me just be a very bit cheeky and do 9,000 divided by 12. So that's £750 per month. That might seem a bit more significant suddenly for people when you break it down to a monthly level, which probably for all of us is a bit more, what will I do with an extra 750? Yeah. Of course, you've got taxes to pay, but let's just say, okay, maybe you get 500 in the actual bank. What would you do with an extra 500? And what does it mean? So it's because it's not just, and this is something that I've been just personally looking at a lot, personal finance wise. It's not just the salary, but also what does this mean for pension payments and potential poverty when you're old and not working anymore? What does this mean for insurance? Like all these things that women are behind on because they're not earning as much. What does this mean if the woman then maybe wants to have a family, wants to have children, comes back at a lower rate because she was at a lower rate earlier? Like, it's not just literally the paycheck, it's all these other implications long-term over the course of her life. And I think maybe looking at this line chart, sure, it doesn't look all that insightful, but breaking it down to something that is more meaningful for you as the author, maybe it is the monthly difference and how much paying or buying power you have, or how much less you have with, 500 less in your pocket, for example.
A couple of other suggestions I've got are, on that y-axis, let's put the currency sign, please, because it's just basic formatting stuff just to make it clear what it is. And I'm not sure I'm wild about the combination of percentages on the labels and pound sterling as the plotted value, if that makes sense. So rather than doing both, I'd do one or the other, or maybe do like Andy did and have a parameter that allows you to flick.
Yeah, good suggestion. Okay, just in the interest of time, because I know we've got a bit of a hard stop. Okay, so next up, Abby.
Yeah.
We have a black background. And
so average teacher pay in England. And this was one I included because I was interested to see, because in the image you've kind of got this overlap of the colouring in the bars relative to the circles in the sort of strip plot. And I was trying to understand, is there a relationship there or not? And
so the strip plot I actually find really interesting because you see in each group how it's going left to right, assuming that's over time. Because when you hover, the tooltip doesn't actually tell you that it's in a different year. So that's missed here. But you can also see that the men are earning more in each category. And that, So I quite like the strip plot. I think it needs a bit of work still to make it actually insightful. But I hadn't thought of using that kind of visualization for this.
Yeah, I guess that you're right. The chronological change from year to year is lost. So I know from the data that actually there is this inflationary increase every year, so it is creeping up all the time. And it does group those roles neatly, and it does make it, particularly in that middle category, it's crying out in that tooltip, isn't it, for actually those different collections of bubbles to actually include the grade as well, because that middle cluster is going to be the other leadership teachers. And the right-hand ones are all going to be the head teachers. So there's just minor stuff to sort out like that to make it clearer.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure in those bars what those totals are. Are they the averages over the whole period, or are they the total averages at the end of the data?
It doesn't actually say, and it just says average. So I wonder if they average between women and men? No.
Yeah, and so that would be no. So it's not that. So I've got concerns that it might be an average of averages, which we touched on at the start. So it would be good if Abe can confirm what the basis of that is, because if it's an average of averages, then we shouldn't do that. And I think it possibly is.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've given a bunch of suggestions there. And then we have Mateus. and a very blackboardy kind of looking viz. So I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, it was going to happen, wasn't it? So I had to include this one because I think he's done it pretty successfully.
Yeah, agreed.
Because sometimes we're a bit reluctant for these funky fonts to be included, but it works. It's fine when it makes sense, like not just a strange font for the sake of it, but this works.
Yeah, I think when it's done well, a lot of stuff works, but it just has to be executed really well.
Yeah, so this is really cool because this is just looking at the title is very clear. What's the source? When is this? And it's showing grade by grade. What's the mean pay at the moment? What does that equate to in terms of difference in this gap column? And then we've got the trend over time on the right-hand side. So it's like multi-tiered insight of saying, well, look, here's your actual numbers. This is what it equates to in terms of a percentage point or a pound difference. And here's what the general trend has been. So it's good because it shows in all the roles other than head teachers, you can see that this gap is declining over time. So it gives you visibility without faffing about of all those different trends and patterns. So I think it's really, really good and clear.
Yeah, I really like that as well. I think this is a very well done viz, combining all the information in a concise way, in a clear way that's simple to understand. And what I would suggest, firstly, is to format the tooltips. And if possible, I mean, you might have to do a viz in tooltips, but make it the same style. So black background, and just kind of, just a bit of, what do you call it? Like a bit of formatting around the titles, etc. And then the total section at the bottom, it gets a bit lost because it doesn't look any different from the other ones. So I wonder if there could be just a little bit something with color. Maybe it's just a slight gray, just so it looks a bit different from the rest, so people see, okay, that's a different thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to make one quick suggestion in between. So for the people, because there's been a bit of discussion, for people who are very curious, I highly recommend this book called Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. It does talk about pay gaps and it's fantastic. It will make you very angry in a good way. And I think for data people, this is a really good book because it's all about the data that exists, but also the data that doesn't exist and why it doesn't exist. So maybe take a screenshot and grab this book wherever you buy books. Okay, I get no commission, so this is personally just a personal recommendation. Okay, so my internet connection is unstable. Well, that's fantastic. I think there's a bit of gaming going on in 2 rooms in this house. Okay, Aditya. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. We have her next. And here we go. Let's make this a bit bigger. Oh, I have to say, the font is surprisingly easy to read. I would probably get rid of the shading in the background, but I thought that a font that's not kind of, straight lines would be hard to read. But this one, for me at least, it's easy to read.
Yeah, it's not bad. So I this one I included because I was flicking through the different thumbnails of all the submissions this week, and I thought it was an interesting contrast to go from the previous one, black and white blackboard, to this pink. And I was trying to understand how hard is it going to be to read that, because I had reservations about this left-hand side with the black and white font over the pink, and I'm still not sold on the pink, but actually reading it's not as difficult as I expected.
Yeah, it's a funny surprise because I love these kind of fonts, but I don't use them for data viz because I'm just like, well, it's just not going to read well, and I want people to, I want it nice and simple. I think a suggestion here would be to check what would this be like with just a very slight gray background, like literally just that one change. And your credits and data source, they could be much smaller. And instead, maybe there's a really cool insight from your text that you could do as a subtitle because, all the power to you. People should know that you created it, but that could just be a bit more subtle and having more of the data and the story focus at the top. And then rotating the labels in the bar charts.
Yeah, and I think one point which is relevant from me is that we've got like more than half of the space is taken up by all of the text on the left, and that's cool, but all of that text is based on pretty much the latest data. So as soon as I start changing the academic year over on the right, I'm almost removing myself from all of that analysis and summary on the left. So it's just a consideration again that I think all of the commentary on the left is fine, but is there that disconnect from the charts that you're doing? So should you instead be focusing on the trends, or should you only be focusing on 2019 because that's what you're calling out? So I think you've got to strike that balance between commentary and what you're plotting.
Yeah, and again, fixing the axis, because currently if you have a look, when I change the year, the axis jumps around and the bars stay the same and they just get a different label. And it would be better to fix the axis so that the bars actually change in length, which then, makes it more obvious that there is a change over time.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. We have
Yanis, I think.
Yanis, yeah, and we've got some donuts. Oh, I could do with a donut right now. I'm getting a bit hungry.
So
yeah.
So with this one, there were a few things I wanted to call out, which, but again, it's kind of fundamental stuff. So again, I've already said it, having these bog standard Tableau color legends, we can all avoid this very simply by just including those colors in a bit of text in the subtitle, and then it's saves a lot of space, looks a bit neater, a bit more professional. So I think tip number one is do that. So have a subtitle which refers to male and female to reinforce that color use and do away with that. I've already touched on formatting of financial data. So it's highlighted at the top that this is in pounds sterling. So just format the axis just to reinforce that. And the lines are really thick. I don't know what you think about it. Mm-hmm. They're just like properly thick, aren't they? It just feels a bit cartoony.
I think, yeah, and rather than making the lines thick, I understand the desire to make them stand out, but maybe instead making them thinner, but having the dot showing for every year, because that way people can follow the pattern easily, but you don't have this like you say, cartoony. It's almost like someone took a thick colored pen and drew the line kind of thing, right?
Mm. And then the section underneath that, this sort of bar and bar section, I think that could be presented more clearly, because all that's showing is, okay, here's the average salary in this year for the different genders, but why don't you actually calculate and plot the actual difference rather than have this bar and bar thing? Because otherwise I'm just looking at male head teachers at 77 grand, female at the 69 and calculating in my head that difference. Don't make me do that. Just plot it as a bar so we can see here's the pounds difference for all these different roles, because it takes away that little bit of calculating that I've got to do. And the bit at the bottom is what I was wrestling with, because I don't get it. I don't know what this is based on, because in order to know how each £100 of spend is split, you'd need to know how many head teachers do we have per school? Probably just one. Yeah. How many leadership roles do we have? Maybe more, but we don't know how many. And how many classroom teachers? Probably loads. So I don't understand what this split is done on. I don't know if it's just added up the in-year values and divided it. I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's going to be right.
Yes, and I think, I'm guessing this is probably trying to show something like, this is how much a woman gets versus, like, it should always be half and half, but I don't know if I don't even know if the numbers don't suggest that. There is a calculation, I don't know if it's called like International Pay Gap Day or something like that, but basically I think it was started in Iceland or Norway or somewhere, but there comes a time, if you say, okay, women are paid, let's assume 80% of what men are paid. So for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes 80 cents. So at some point in the year comes a day where men, like, to achieve the same salary over the year, men can stop working and women kind of have to keep working. But women saying, oh, let's just stop working today because, now we stop getting paid if it were an equal pay situation. And I wonder if there's some calculation that he wanted to include here, and whether there's a way to do that more effectively, to say, if you were to, I don't know, like something around, if you were to pay two people the same salary, like this woman would have this much more, or something like that. But the donuts I don't understand them.
Yeah, so that was the main reason for including that, was I just didn't get that section.
Okay.
Should we move on to George?
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, I'm happy to take comments in the live chat, because I'm not fully sure what's going on with DataFam feedback, because I just saw that George asked for it 2 days ago, but there hasn't been any comments. So is that still happening? And if so, I haven't really seen much around it, so I'm just curious if anyone knows more than me. But anyway, gender pay gap in state schools. And I would make sure to include somewhere in the title or subtitle that this is just for the UK. It's UK, isn't it? Or is it just England?
I think it's just the UK, but I can't remember, to be honest.
Okay. And then also making sure that it's UK rather than England, because England is just part of the UK, but there are other countries as well.
It says England over on the right, so let's assume it's England.
Okay, yeah.
So this one was interesting, and it's because it's basically barbell charts, isn't it? But I was debating in my head whether I would plot it this way, where you've got them staggered over 2 rows rather than plotted as separate circles on the same row, if that makes sense. Because normally you see barbells just on a single row. And initially, my gut reaction was actually, I don't know that this works. But when you look at that nice little, it's like a legend on the right showing that equal pay would be this perfectly vertical line, it sort of makes sense. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on it, because it's not what I would instinctively do with the barbell chart, but I kind of like it.
I like it too.
Yeah, it's like a double whammy. So you can see that left to right they're all different, and you can see that that's the uniform trend of it drops down to the bottom right, so men earn more. But I can't quite make my mind up if it's more complicated to understand than if they were just in a row. So I'm not sure if I've added one later on, which is that, but I don't dislike it.
Well, I wonder, do we have time? Oh, I mean, I try to not get myself lost in the weeds, but I have this idea. What if we were to move it around? Because, oh my God, I have so many things in front of my screen that I have to lean over to see what's actually going on. But what if we had, what if we moved this around? Because for me, the equal pay barbell thing, the vertical one, I like the little legend. I would make it appear somewhere more prominent.
Mm.
But what if we pivoted it? Because for me, when it's equal, it's balanced. It's like a scale. And if it was a horizontal barbell, I think that might just be, but is it just this? Yeah. So if we were to literally just pivot it, and so if we then make this equal thing, is it an image? Oh, so that must be some sort of image. Dumbbell equal pay. Ah, here we go. So if we make that swapsies, and let me make this whole thing into full screen. Oh, we can't. Oh, I can zoom into the chart, but I just wonder whether a horizontal bar just makes it a bit more like equality, because it's kind of like scales. That would be my suggestion there.
Yeah, there's a good comment in the chat from Sarah Pallett saying actually it almost makes you assume that men earn less because they're on that row below, and that's something I hadn't even thought about, but it's a good point.
I don't know if I thought that, but it definitely, could be an assumption people make. But yeah, maybe it should be more like if the male is first, then it used, yeah. Good
and I guess that becomes that becomes the answer in a way, doesn't it? Because actually, if they're plotted on the same row, then actually it's just the positioning of the circle which becomes the dominant thing. And while we know that the men would be on the right-hand side on all of them, it would alleviate that confusion.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, maybe something for George to have a play with to see what he prefers and what he finds useful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Do we have time for? We have time for one more, right?
Yeah, to be honest, I can probably knock around for another 15 minutes. I'm always very prepared for meetings, so I'll be able to wing it.
Okay, up to you. Shall we just keep going in order, or do you want to select? Looking at the scroll bar, we still have probably 2 hours worth. But which ones do we want to go with next?
Okay, let's go with Anshu, who is the sort of greeny background.
I can hear some children in the background.
Yeah, it's probably going to kick off.
Oh. Is this the smallest font we've ever had? Because I'm going to 150% and I'm struggling to read it.
Yeah, it was for me, this all it comes down to an accessibility discussion again, and we've talked about our eyesight, and we're young and healthy, but it's a lot of effort to read it, and then when you overlay that with this background, which is moving from a green to sort of a bluey almost in the bottom left corner, you get all this overlaying things that are hard to see. So I think the insight that's in there gets a bit diluted by an overload of color and the small font. So I think if I was Anshu, I'd look to just reshape a lot of it. And I think a lot of the problem is actually just about decisions made with the layout. So the line chart bit is almost like a spark line. It doesn't need to be so big. It's taken up a third of that space. I would just shrink it right down because you don't need that. And then all of a sudden you've got far more space for the summary over on the right. You could easily make the text at the top a little bit bigger. It's just generally a bit small, isn't it?
Yeah, and given how much space there is that's empty, this could all be large. Like the font could be larger, but the viz itself could be smaller. And I just don't really know what to focus on because I'm getting red and purple. Not sure why. Not sure what they are because we don't really need the colors when we have a distinct row for female and male. Then I also get green and red in the lines. Not sure what those are about. I'm a bit confused with this.
Yeah, I think it's the font's too small, and I think there's overuse of color.
Yeah, agreed. Because if I make this 100%, I literally cannot read it. It's
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, if we go to Kelly's next, this kind of ticks back to what we were talking about with George's because this is what I'd call a more normal layout of barbells, and we can just see if it makes sense. So it's done in a slightly different way. So we've got again my comment about color legends at the bottom.
And can I make a suggestion on the color legends? Because there is a very simple way to actually make those just a bit nicer, and that's with ASCII symbols. If you have these barbells with circles, why not make your color legend circles and just use ASCII symbols in a text box and color them accordingly? Like that's as easy as it is. Yeah,
it's a good point. So it's interesting. So it's not quite the same as George's because it's focusing on the year rather than the gender, but I think you can kind of apply what we said to this viz. It becomes simpler because, I mean, you kind of would expect the salaries in 2020 to be higher than in the first year. So I think it's probably more helpful to George than it is to Kelly to say, George, maybe try what Kelly's done here with yours to get that layout sorted. I think for Kelly, all I can really say is it's nice. I'd say what's that extra decimal place on the percentages? It's not really needed. And I wonder how important it is because you would expect, unless you're very unlucky, there to be an element of wage inflation. So to say that salaries have increased over this period, it should almost be an expectation. So I don't know if actually having those percentages there is massively insightful. I'd probably rather focus on the gender gap instead, which this layout doesn't lend itself to because you almost separate the two.
Yeah, and let me actually download this very quickly. Oh, this is now very big. Okay, I have to move my light. Because I think, so Denise was very happy about the ASCII tip, so maybe I can show that quickly as well. And Ashik said he misses Andy in the chat. Yes, Andy is not available today for the chat, and I notice it's definitely a lot quieter without him.
Is he actually working?
I don't know if he is. I really don't know. I think I'm pretty sure that his computer is taken, or his screen at least is taken up with by Henry to do some gaming. So okay, let me show both things. The ASCII thing. Oh no! I recently deleted my my browsing history, so now which one do I typically use? I just really can't remember. But it's 25ch something. Okay, let me just do ASCII. Oh, let's actually go to Google, because as much as I like Ecosia, ASCII circle. I think it's 25h something. There's 1, 2. That should be hopefully enough. You just find yourself one of those pages. Oh God. Where is the cross? You say copy, and then where are we? Oh yeah, Tableau. That's the one. Let's create a little. I'm literally just gonna freestyle this, and then we're gonna make this. I'm just gonna go with Arial, and we're gonna pick a color. So we're gonna do this one here, 12, and that is 2010, and then we'll copy that whole thing. I mean, it's so, and if to make your life easier, what I would recommend is to first copy it and like paste it into Word. What is it called? Like the text program, like a, what is that?
Oh, like Notepad or something.
WordPad, yeah, or Notepad, just to get rid of the formatting. So this is 2020, and actually let's make this a bit bigger, because you want a nice big circle. I mean, then you've got the alignment issue, but you know, this is just a very quick way of showing you. You know, this might just be a nicer color legend because it aligns with that. And what did we say? Oh, I wanted to show if we now, okay, these are two visors, but that's okay. If we just move gender over there, and why is this not full screen? And then the increase and decrease, we also move gender over there, because what Charlie said was, it's hard to compare women and men when that's not the focus of the actual viz. So let's make that entire view, get rid of this legend there, chuck that somewhere at the top. So now, I mean, you know, we're not fully like perfectly, what is all of this? The formatting is a bit funky, but what I wanted to show is if we put the female male to the right side of the grade, then you can actually compare those more easily. You see because the subtitle, I really like that it says, you know, female teachers still being paid less. It should be less, not lesser, less than their female counterpart, than their male counterparts. But you couldn't really see that easily, and now you see female and male right on top of each other. So that's just what I wanted to show. Okay. Let's go back to our normal thing. Okay. Which one would you like to look at next?
Can we jump up to Arafat, because he's been waiting patiently for weeks to get involved, and now is his moment in the sun. Excellent.
Oh, and if people are using Mac, then use Sublime to get, like, literally you just want a text editor that does zero formatting, that just clears all the formatting from wherever you're copying the ASCII symbols from, and then you don't get such a messy thing in Tableau. Okay, Arafat, let me zoom in. You go.
Yeah, so the positioning of it is salaries in England state-funded schools and the gender pay gap. So there's a few things I found interesting. So what he is quite hard to get your head around. So first of all, in classroom teachers, in this first column, you've got this you've got a 2.6% difference, and the fact that it's running down the page is, I think, there to imply that it's negative. So females earn 2.6 less in classroom teacher roles than if you're female compared to males. I think that's what it's showing. But the tool tissue, because the way I look at it is classroom teachers are the entry level role, then it should be the other leadership teachers who are like these intermediate management roles, and then you've got the overall head teacher. So you get this strange variability in the values that Arafat's shown here. So we've gone from 2.6 up to 11, then down to 7. So I think I would reorder that, so you can just manually set the sort order of a dimension in Tableau to correct that. And that I just find the layout quite complex and quite hard to understand with the split of having those dimension titles at the bottom for the grades, and then you've got this bar chart running down the page. The use of color I don't think is particularly helpful. We don't need color to encode if we've already got a bar there, so I would just be quite careful with that. And then I'm just struggling with the relationship between the top charts and the bottom charts.
Yeah, is it now about gender pay gap, or is it about increases over time of salaries? Because the top chart would be sufficient to look at what the title talks about. I would not make it a negative axis. I would make it still, starting at 0 going up. But the bottom chart doesn't really have anything to do with... I guess it's the first part of the title, but then why does it come second? I don't understand. Yeah,
I think that aside from the issues of the direction of the axes and the color use, I think it's that title thing. I wouldn't expect an annotation to be used as a title, so I'd do away with the bits that refer to gender pay gap in the top annotation box, and in the second one where it's talking about salary increase. Don't do that as annotations. Give us a title so it really draws attention to the fact that these metrics are different and we're looking at different things.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to choose your favourite out of the remainders for us to tackle as the last one?
All right. Let's look at Anthony's with that picture.
Yeah, because it's his first Makeover Monday.
Oh, very good. Very good. Welcome, Anthony Anderson. Oh, I wonder whether his teachers picked him a lot because he would have been so high on the list alphabetically with a name like Anthony Anderson. I was always kind of in the top 10 on an alphabetical list, so I could make myself kind of disappear obscurely amongst other names. Okay. I guess the first thing that stands out, the only thing that really stands out, is that there is a big picture, but it doesn't show a teacher, it shows students. So I think if the focus is on teacher salaries, the focus of the picture should be teachers, plus it's really distracting because it's so prominent. So if you want to keep the picture, fine. Make sure you have permission, because I see no credit to the picture, no credit to the data source or your name, but putting a transparent, maybe 10-20% opacity white thing over the picture just to make it a bit more backgroundy and not as prominent, and then working the other charts into it. But the charts, so the titles have transparency, but the charts are just white charts stuck on a picture, which never looks really all that great because it doesn't blend. It's charts stuck on a picture. And
yeah, and so stuff I've said about just taking a bit of care with formatting again. So let's put some pound signs on here. I think there's an overuse of color. So it's discrete categorical data. There's no need to color everything independently because it doesn't really mean anything. So I think that would be a way to sort of declutter it. And it's almost like maybe, and I'm just guessing, maybe Anthony's ended up adding the colors to try and make the data stand out, and that's the challenge you've got when you've got a background image. You lose the data, so what could you do to bring it forward? You could add loads of color in there. So I think it's just a lesson in, if you're going to use an image, you've got to be able to find a way to soften it, to push it into the background, because it's quite prominent in this case.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think that probably brings us to the end, right? Because you have to get to your meeting, or did you want to pick one more?
No, I'm going to have to end it, I'm afraid, because I've got to try and remember what I'm supposed to talk about in a bit.
That's okay. Maybe I'll take another 5 minutes and just give people a very quick I don't know, recommendation or something for the remaining ones. But
Cool.
thanks for joining me again, and good luck for your meeting.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for joining, and I hope you found our feedback useful.
I'm sure they did, and I'm very much looking forward to your feedback at the end of the week, or the favorites.
Cool. Okay. I shall see you all later on.
Okay. Cheers, Charlie.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Now, I hope that people can still... can somebody just quickly comment whether they are seeing a picture of Twitter again rather than a viz? Because what I see that I think you're seeing is just some buffering. So hopefully everything is still good. Now, there are still quite a lot of vizzes that we didn't get to, and that's always the case. So just in general, we will probably never get through the entire list. And this is even like a cut down list of vizzes. So, don't be frustrated with us if we didn't get to yours. Just please continue submitting, and hopefully you'll also learn from the others. Now let me bring my face back while I just quickly say goodbye. So hope you learned something today. I think we've had a few different charts. So we had bar chart, line chart, we had donuts, barbells, and I hope you found that really useful. And the plan was to do this review next week, but I'm actually on holiday as of today, and next week I physically can't do it because I'll be traveling, and for this whole live streaming setup I need multiple screens, and it's just not going to work. So next week we're going to take a break from Viz Review. It will be back the week after, because the week of the 28th of September we're going to have another Viz 5 challenge. So we'll make sure that on the 30th of September we will have Viz Review again. We'll do that with Seth from Operation Fistula. Very excited to have him back, and I don't know yet what the topic is, but I'm very much looking forward to it. A couple of announcements. So if you have a viz that you think, oh my god, this needs a makeover, or you have a data set that you think needs to be talked about, and you can find a viz that goes with it, you can submit that. You can submit suggestions. Just send Charlie or me or both of us a message on Twitter. Like, you can do a direct message, you can do a public one, it doesn't really matter. And we'll put it on our list, and we can then include it in the schedule. So if you have any suggestions, they're always welcome. I'm typically quite sorted because every 2 weeks I get a Viz 5 data set, but Charlie always appreciates some suggestions. And then I'm just going to quickly check the chat. I'm not on Twitter. Okay, I think there's a couple of questions. Let me see. Everyone saw Twitter, all good. Check mine, you scroll down it. Yeah, we just run out of time. Are the visits arranged on basis of time submitted? Yes, so we have them in chronological order, but also we don't take every single one from the hashtag VizReview, because as Charlie said earlier, you may have not been on yet, but if we get 50 bar charts, we don't need to talk about 50 bar charts, because our feedback for 1 or 2 bar charts will likely apply to all of them. So please make sure that if you don't get yours reviewed, but something that's similar to you, like there are always, every week, there are people who say, mine didn't get reviewed, but I learned a bunch. Please be one of those people, because we can't spoon feed you anyway, but you can absorb the stuff that we teach and apply it to your own viz, even if your viz looks completely different. Thank you for the reviews. Okay. Okay, I submitted to the Makeover Monday website. Yeah, the Makeover Monday website, that's not for Viz Review. I really don't know what else to do, because I've preached it so many times now there is a video on the Makeover Monday website, and it talks about exactly how it all works. You need to submit on Twitter if you want to be included in this. We don't check anywhere else, because Twitter is where it all happens. So go on Twitter, post your viz, a picture, not just a link, post a picture and your link, and the hashtag Makeover Monday, and the hashtag MMVizReview. And then from that list, we will compile a collection that is diverse and representative of what was submitted that week. Cool. And LinkedIn we also don't check. Okay. Good. Okay. Everyone seems good. Another reminder that we have our live events on the 5th of October at 8 a.m. UK time. So that's kind of like afternoon in Asia, and that evening Pacific time, and not Pacific time, sorry, like Australia, New Zealand, and 5 p.m. UK time on the same day. We're doing it twice so that everyone can participate, hopefully. And that's going to be Makeover Monday Live. You literally don't need to bring anything, register anywhere. You just watch it on YouTube live and then join us and do the data viz at the same time. All the information is somewhere. I posted a video about it. But Andy has also already scheduled those so you can see them. Cool. I think that's it. I hope you all have a great week. I mean, I'll still be around on Twitter and stuff. I need to work on my viz, but I'm going to be on holiday, so expect a bit less of me in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what everyone makes of the vizzes. I will be posting a recap with the lessons learned, and Charlie will be doing the favorites for this week. So make sure you tune in for that. And now let us end with a nice little cover slide so that we all know it's coming to an end. Thanks everyone for tuning in to this review, for being part of this, for joining the live chat, for talking to each other and connecting with one another. I think you'll find that really valuable over time. You'll meet so many people, and I hope you will be here again in a couple of weeks. So until then, take care. Bye.